Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am One Two podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is my good friend, producer, and co-pilot, Mr. Dan the Man, across the table. How you doing, Dan?
I am doing great today. Hope everybody out there is doing well also.
Great. Good to see you, brother. If you're just happening upon this podcast, this is an all things recovery podcast. And if you're saying, who the hell is this guy? I am a 22-year veteran of being a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor in the state of Kentucky. I have a master's of science in social work. I am a 40-year veteran of AA and recovery. I just celebrated 40 years of recovery. Thank you. If you think I came in at 15, it wasn't. It was age 22. And so I never thought I'd be here this long, and I never thought it would ever work. And again, miracles that just happened. And I also had an alcoholic father. So I've had recovery and dysfunction and needing tools in my life, my whole life. And so that's my background. And what we're doing with this podcast is we want to provide a platform to create discussion and provide tools for people to achieve better with their lives. You know, as I said in the last podcast we just filmed, the reason why you're seeing people act foolish out there and turn to drugs and alcohol and or to each other and fighting each other is because of lack of tools. That's all it is. They don't know what else to do. If an animal is stuck in a cage and you badger it enough and it's got no other tools, it will like claw at the bars to the point of being bloody to get out, right? So that's the only tool it knows is fight or flight. So hopefully in this podcast we can provide a forum to share your questions and talk about your life, but also mostly to provide information, particularly for people in early recovery, but just everybody. This is not just for people who are in AA or NA or drugs and alcohol. This is a podcast for all of us struggling humans that are just trying to get by in this world and figure out what is it all about. So today we're going to talk about the topic of progression, which is one of the four elements of what makes alcoholism and addiction a disease. Now, remember, the medical community cleared alcoholism as a disease in 1956 when the American Medical Association had a convention, and they took it up as a topic that year and said, does it fit the model of all other diseases? So whether you have cancer, diabetes, or whatever it is, there's a four-step model that everything has to fit. Number one, it's primary. It exists by itself. It's not caused by something else. A lot of people take the tack that their alcoholism is caused by having a stressful job, or they drink because they have a wife that's not acting right. But no, it would exist whether you had a great wife or not a good wife. It's a primary condition. Number two, it's chronic. It does not go anywhere without treatment. If you have a chronic back problem, if you have a chronic pain problem, none of that is good. So chronic means without treatment, without proper tools, it's going to get worse and worse. Number three, it's progressive, which is what we're talking about today, this progressive element that I think it's going to go away at some point, or maybe I'm past it, but no, it keeps showing up. That's the gift of alcoholism. It never goes away, and it always gets worse. And number four, fatal. This is a fatal illness that kills people, and it's really sad. The latest statistics just for fentanyl and opioids is there's a jetliner falling out of the sky every day of people who are addicted, dying from this disease. And the argument of people in the recovery community is that if you turn on the news every night and they said there was an airplane falling out of the sky killing 356 people every day, you would demand action. Right? But we just accept this in our culture like this is normal, and it's not. It's somebody's daughter, somebody's son, somebody's mother, somebody's grandmother. Addiction knows no boundaries, right? So, but we want to talk about the aspect of progression to help new people understand, how did I get sick? How did I get here? And again, we talk about addiction on this podcast. We mean all forms of addiction, including codependency. Codependency is a progressive illness that gets worse the longer you don't have tools. Whether your thing is gaming, whether your thing is technology, too much food, sex, whatever your deal is, we're here to deal with all bedevilments that affect the human race. And think about this in terms of your story, how things have gotten worse, and what were the markers along the way that were really important that you missed, that we're going to talk about and point out for people to understand how they're getting sick. So let's start with the beginning, because most people don't understand this aspect of this being a biologically, genetically passed disease. Now, I know that my good friend Gabor Mate, and I use that term lightly, I don't know the man. He's a genius. I'm gonna say unequivocally, capital G, genius for bringing the element of trauma into addiction. But from all of the neuroscientists I've been at the feet of for all the years of training I've had professionally, all of them say, bottom line, this is an extremely complex brain illness, and there's not just one answer for all of it. In fact, I've had neuroscientists say if you're an addict or an alcoholic, you have one of the most complex illnesses that exists. And then they went on to say that cancer is a walk in a park compared to treating this illness because of all the different elements that have to be considered to foster an environment for the person to get well. And my old sponsor, Dr. Burns Brady, who know more about this than any man I've ever met, used to lean forward in meetings and say, it's a fucking miracle that any of us are sober, because we should not be based on the science of how our disease operates in our brain. So when I talk about a genetically passed illness, he doesn't play so much on that. He's more about what happened to you as a child, what was your trauma, and significantly that drives the fuel of the disease. But what we do know about the genes is you're either an alcoholic or you're not. You are either a real alcoholic. And I'm not so sure Gabor has read the AA Big Book. I don't know if he's been to an AA meeting, but these guys from 1935 figured it out. You either have this for real, or you're an amateur, you're a normal person, or you're just somebody who's going through a phase. Now, how do we know the difference? Well, I can take a grandmother who gets addicted to her pain medication, and if she does not have my genetic makeup, she will go through her treatment 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it takes for her, and she will come out and sin no more. She will not be down in the hood looking for more pills. She will not be shooting people to get more pills, and she will not end up in the prison system. She is different than me. You can take an alcoholic or an addict and put them through the same construct, the same intervention, and guess what will happen? They'll come out and use again, no matter what. They can't hang with us. And I mean that with all the pride in the world. If you're one of us, normal people cannot hang with us. We never stop. We never quit. This is why it is such a miracle that we're sober. So when I say I had this genetic condition since birth, for me, it means I had a brain condition which causes me to react differently to the world. Backing up a little bit, that's the basis of all psychological mental illnesses, is that the person has chemical deficiencies or chemical imbalances or differences that causes them to react, feel, process, and act differently in this world than a normal person would. If I take a person with schizophrenia who hears negative voices, they're going to perceive their day different than a normal person is perceiving the same day at work. Put them side by side on the line, and one's going to have one experience, the other's going to have another experience. Same deal with addicts and alcoholics. The joke I always say is that if there's a massive accident right outside of a hospital with bodies being strewn across the road because it's horrific, and there's 4 people that saw it, 3 people who are normal will have one version of the accident, and the alcoholic will have his own story. And it will be completely different from what he saw than what other people saw. And then most of us who have this disease had that feeling that we were different, that we didn't quite fit in. We couldn't quite relate to these earth people. They were different than us somehow. We didn't know how. That's what I mean by genetically based. So the scientists have studied this. They've studied this with twin studies, which are unethical. They were done back in the 40s. They would separate kids. One would go to a normal family, one would go to an alcoholic family, and if they had the genes, they would still become alcoholic no matter what their family upbringing was. Now, we cannot deny the influence of family upbringing and trauma. So Gabor is 100% correct in this area. To deny that is ignorant. That's missing a whole piece of what's fueling the illness, right? So this is the split that I was giving 10 years ago, and I still stick by it because I've not found any evidence to contrary to challenge it. 60-40. 60-40, 60 being your genetics, your biology, you're set up to receive alcohol differently. Bill Wilson called it the phenomenon of craving. We are going to have a different reaction to the substance than an average person. It's going to transform my whole world and be the best thing I ever found in life. And another person might be like, yeah, I had a great time, but I'm not going to give up my job for it. I'm different than them. So that's the 60%, and then the 40% is the environment, meaning that we have to address both. Now, why is Christopher bringing this up at the beginning of our story of progression? Because you need to understand it really doesn't matter if you came from a good family or a bad family. And this becomes one of those things in my treatment group. Well, they'll come in and they'll say things like, well, I never really had a bad parents, and I don't know if I belong in here. And it's like, dude, stop. We all had unique upbringings. No matter how good it was what it was. And usually for an alcoholic, it didn't fit our needs. And we got our trauma anyway, even if it was perfect. I could have had a perfect parent and still be pissed at him. It's just how we're wired, okay? So just know that you got the genes waiting to be triggered off. The only thing that can trigger them off is if you use, which is your environment. And that fuel of the trauma and stuff is going to make you take your first drink or drug, which is then going to kick off your biology and screw you for the rest of your life. You follow me on that? 60-40. So here we go. So you start out with that split. 60% is your susceptibility to addiction. Your genetics, biology can't change it. 40% is your fuel, the reasons you have to drink and drug, your stuff. All right. So on your first time using, which is a monumental, pivotal, transformative moment in my life, and I hear people talk about it, and I've heard a speaker say this one time, I'm not so sure many people have had a first time using experience when I hear their story, because they do not describe it with as much passion as mine was. Now, there's reasons for that. First time you use your chemical, you might not have found the one that fit you. That is very important to note. Every single person is wired with certain more receptors than others to find their favorite chemical. Okay? What it is, the main ones, is you have two major receptors in your brain. You have excitatory receptors and you have inhibitory receptors. Now, these receptors react with the world more than all the other ones, okay? If a person has too many excitatory receptors, their experience of the world will generally be, it's too loud, there's too much going on, and I am looking for a substance to take the edge off. Or as my old sponsor, Burns Brady, used to say, I want to be smooth, which is why he liked alcohol. So they will gravitate towards downer drugs, sometimes even heroin or things that chill you, so that the world is quieter and they can sort of take a mental vacation because they have too many excitatory, receiving too much from the outside world stimulus. Then we have the people like me, and it was very helpful to learn this, who have too many inhibitory receptors. And my inhibitory receptors, my experience of the world was that it's dull, it doesn't move fast enough, these people aren't smart enough, I need to get moving, I need to make things happen, and I gravitated towards the drugs that would speed things up and give me a deeper experience. Marijuana is great for that because it's psychotropic, cocaine, speed, anything that would get me going. I love that. I want to have a grander, bigger experience of life because I have too many inhibitors. Life's kind of boring to me. So based on what you have, does that say you're necessarily going to use just that? No, all addicts use many different chemicals, but you've got to find the one that's your favorite. And as I say that, be careful of the phrase drug of choice. We have been told as counselors to outlaw that phrase, and I try to do that with all my patients, because when we say drug of choice, we are using that word choice as if they actually chose it. And what did I just tell you? Your brain chose it for you. How do you like them apples? Before you were even born, you were wired to receive your favorite drug differently than all other drugs on the planet, which was going to determine whether you were going to like a legal drug or whether you weren't going to like an illegal drug, whether you're going to like a really bad illegal drug like fentanyl or whether you're going to like a semi-bad drug like marijuana. Think about that, being screwed from birth, set up for that in your brain. Again, I don't think some of these other experts who talk just about trauma and stuff, A, they're not one of us, and B, it's not, I don't want to say this, smarter men than I in many areas, but if you've never walked in my skin, you just don't know what it's like to feel like an alcoholic or an addict, right? So when you find your favorite, that's the game-changing moment. That's the moment where suddenly you turn on and you're like, where has this been my entire life? This makes everything better. This is what I've been looking for. I've heard many people describe it, and I heard a speaker use my phrase the other day, which is my favorite. It was the first time in my life I felt like I took a deep breath and went like this. And then I was I. And I was like, this is where I want to be. This is what they told me God and Jesus would do for me. This is the state I've been looking for my whole life. Love has not given it to me. Girlfriends have not given it to me. Power and money has not given it to me. This is where I want to be. That warm hug. I am home. Because as an actor and alcoholic, I'm not comfortable in my own skin most of the time, right? So a lot of people that come to my group are confused about what their favorite is, right? They'll say, well, I used a lot of different things. I say, well, I can prove to you what your favorite is. And here's what's astonishing. Your favorite might not even be on your assessment. I'll explain that in a second. So I said, well, imagine for a second that I'm God. And I always wait for them to look at me like, what? So I'm God, and I'm watching you in that group with Christopher, and I'm thinking, you're having a rough day. You're having a tough time. I want to give you a break. I want to take you up to heaven for a moment and give you a chance to just enjoy yourself. So come up to heaven with me. I'll keep your body in group. I'll keep your eyes blinking and keep you breathing so it'll look like you're there, but you're with me. Your spirit's with me up in heaven. We're going to go have a little break. Now, when we get to heaven, I got this table over here, see? And this table has every chemical known to mankind on it. And because I'm God, it's the purest of the pure, baby. I don't deal with no junk. This is the best that you probably never even tried in your entire damn life. And so here's the deal. I will let you have a free pass. You can go over to that table and you can choose one chemical and one chemical only. Now, you can use as much as you want. I don't care how high you want to get. This is a free pass. Christopher will never know. I'll put you back in group. It won't affect your sobriety. But if I let you use the whole table, you would die. So we're not going to do that. But if you wanted to pick one and go for it, what you going for, pal? What you going for? Well, guess what? This alcoholic would probably go for freebase. This was way before the crack cocaine epidemic took hold. I was using it in the years 80 to 84. And thank God crack wasn't around, because I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I know that for a fact. But that was the one that was like hand in glove, perfect, cleanest high I ever experienced. And I was always a chemical scientist. I didn't like garbage. I didn't like side effects. I wanted the cleanest. I didn't bother with garbage. I hated garbage. I wanted the cleanest experience with the highest payoff, right? And that was not on my assessment when I went to treatment. Why? Because it's hard to get. It was hard to make. My friend tried to teach me. It's complicated. Richard Pryor blew himself up. Reportedly, it's different for those of you that know the true story. But it could get you on fire and be problems. I just couldn't get it. If your drug isn't around, and drugs do change flavor in terms of availability throughout time. So if your drug's not around, it might not have been what you were using right before you went to treatment. So I had all these other drugs on my treatment plan, but I didn't have that one, which is kind of interesting, because that's the one I want the most. In a perfect world where I could just get away with it, that's what I would go for. So your favorite, when you find that, you're going to do everything you can within your power to stay within that realm. Now, there's times we have to vary. I always considered alcohol a secondary junk drug. I would do it when there was nothing else around. Alcohol and cigarettes. You know, you're doing that because you can't find anything else, and it sucked. I didn't like it at all. Always when I was doing alcohol, I had to have marijuana or cocaine or something to mix with it. But when you find your favorite, it becomes what we call the honeymoon period of your progression. Everything you can do to maintain your supply and stay closer to that favorite, because you won't get a payoff with any other drug. Any other drug won't hit the spot as much. And you're going to try and stay in that zone. Now, during the honeymoon phase, it seems like all is good. Just talking about what a honeymoon is. Excuse me for a second. Wet my whistle. Just talking about what a honeymoon is, right? She's still pretty. She's still dressing up to go to lunch, to go to dinner. We're in Vegas. We're being comped at the tables. We're on honeymoon, man. Everything's good. But that's not to say that you can't have consequences during the honeymoon. You can definitely have a DUI. You could definitely get in trouble at work. The problem during the honeymoon is that none of these issues that come up will be serious enough for you to quit. There's a telling line in the big book where Bill says straight out how he included so much information in 164 pages and covered all these different areas we believe is the hand of God. But he puts in there, many of us could have quit while there was still time, but there wasn't a sufficient reason to. The heat wasn't hot enough yet. Why am I going to quit before I need to? That's not the alcoholic logic. So during the honeymoon, you can have problems. And I think it's important for your individual progression journey. And I encourage my patients to do this. Think of those moments that happened that surprised you, even during the honeymoon, where you broke one of your personal boundaries and you didn't expect that you were going to do that. Now, that can be anything from I'm committed to my wife and then all of a sudden I slept with somebody else. Or it can be something like I'm not going to drink in the morning. Or it can be I'm not going to drink at work. Or for me, it was a very telling moment that I completely overlooked until a counselor or somebody brought this to my attention. Because this was long before I hit the wall. This was probably 2 years before I hit the wall and was at my lowest bottom. But I was in New York City and I was trying to be in the theater world, and I had an opportunity to have this lead in this play, and I wanted this more than anything. And the director was a friend of mine, so I almost was a shoo-in. All I had to do was do the audition. That's all you gotta do, man. Don't screw it up. Just do the audition. The part's probably yours. And as I'm waiting to go on, because the dude's before me out there on the stage, I look over and here's this pretty girl who I've always wanted to get with. And she just smiles at me, and she takes this little white bag of powder out of her purse and just goes ding, 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 like ringing the dinner bell at me. And I just went, yeah. You're kidding me, right? You remember that cartoon with Bugs Bunny where he's in the hole and the native creates the carrot stew, and the little smell, the thing goes down the hole and he comes floating down and goes doo, 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 doo. That was me walking over to her, and we disappeared in the staircase, and I don't know how I got back. Eventually I got back. I was late. I still got to audition, and because I got the part, I convinced myself that wasn't a problem. However, later, I refused to really look at it, but I could feel it on the horizon. I had just put something ahead of the one thing I wanted more than anything else in the world. If you had asked my 18, 19-year-old kid in New York City, would you give your left arm to be an actor, to be a professional actor, to be in movies? I would have said, fuck yeah, no problem. I wanted that more than anything. I wanted that more than any drug on the planet. But I gave it all up in a heartbeat because pretty little thing over here. I think those are vital moments everybody should look at in your journey where you surprised yourself and said, I did what? Because we'll do this afterwards. We'll just move on. I'm not looking back at that. I'm not comfortable with that. Breaking boundaries, man. Vital piece of your progression journey. All right. Unfortunately, honeymoons don't last. You come back home, there's laundry to be done. Now you got kids running around with snot hanging out their nose, and she's not as pretty anymore. I'm not picking on her. I'm just using it for a joke. And now you're in real life. And so when the honeymoon ends for addicts and alcoholics or for any other addiction, you're going to have what I like to call a heart attack moment. I think it's the best way to describe this. Something is going to happen that has never happened before, that is such a magnitude and intensity that it's going to spin your little head around, and it's very frightening. And when I explain this to my patients, I tell them, look, we're in Hospital Row over here in Louisville, where our hospital is. There's literally 5 or 6 hospitals within that 5 square mile area. There's so many damn doctor's offices. It's called DuPont, but literally it's ridiculous. There's doctors everywhere. And I say, literally within a mile of here, there's a guy sitting in a bed who had a stroke or a heart attack last night, and he's looking up at the professional caregivers and saying, what am I? What happened? Where am I? What happened? And he literally cannot bring his mind to comprehend the gravity of what actually took place. And they're telling him, the doctor, if he's a sensible doctor, is telling him, now look, you had a heart attack, which means you're going to have to start changing your ways. We got to give up the smoking. We got to stop eating the Big Macs. We got to start getting some exercise. You might have to make some changes in who you hang out with and where you go. Trigger you to drink or eat. And we got to make some changes if you want to live, because since you've had one heart attack, it's more likely you're going to have a second heart attack. And that is something that's vital to know about this heart attack moment. You are going to hit the wall again sooner after that if you don't pay attention than you did before. So for instance, the dude with a heart attack or stroke who got away with smoking and eating crappy and all that other stuff for decades maybe, and he hits the wall, if he tries to live that same lifestyle when he leaves the hospital, he will be back there in less than a year. The amount of people who have multiple stents put in their heart because they don't change their ways, they don't change their lifestyle, is beyond, it's staggering really, how many have to be repeated. But with addicts and alcoholics, I tell my people, okay, you were 16 when you started using and now you're 25 in this treatment center the first time. That's a 9-year run. You did pretty good, son. But if you don't follow what I tell you, you'll be back here within 6 months to a year, if you make it back. A lot of times people don't make it back. They die in this process. And it's frightening how much it speeds up. That's the hallmark of the heart attack moment, is that your consequences will get heavier and faster and with more fury than anything you've ever experienced in your life before. It'll be downright frightening. It will downright frighten you to what's happening. And you will have trouble wrapping your brain around it, saying, wait a minute, I was here and I could get away with this, and now it's like the cops are picking on me, or it's like work is picking on me, or whatever. My health is my body's betraying me. It'll all just start snowballing. For whatever reason, you've just reached a threshold where your body says enough. The universe says enough. You can either obey it or it's going to get way worse and way worse and way worse. Now, the problem is for addicts and alcoholics or anybody else that's addicted to food or any other substance, we desperately want to go back to Oz or go back to Kansas like Dorothy did, right? We want to go back home to where I was okay and I could just use a little bit. Please let me try, and we'll try the desperate experiment to make it work. But just like the heart attack guy, we will have symptoms really quick because something has shifted. It's changed. That's the heart attack moment. You can never go back to where you were. So since those rules of the game have changed, now you're going to experience thing that is worse than anything you've ever experienced in your entire recovery using career. Your entire using career. You've never experienced this before. It's called the downward spiral. This is a very odd thing. Bill outlines this in the book. Again, another miracle thing that he even caught this. He says there's times when it seems like we're regaining control. So I call my buddy and I say, how's it going? You just got a treatment. He said, woohoo, I'm doing great, man. I'm only drinking beer. I'm not touching the liquor. That's the devil's drug, but I'm just drinking beer. I'm good. I'm handling it. And I'm like, cool. Let me call you in 2 months. Cool. Talk to you later. Followed by worse relapse than ever. Times when it seems like we're gaining control, followed by worse relapse than ever, which causes this downward spiral in circles. So I call this same guy in 2 months. How's the beer plan going, man? Oh, fuck. What you mean? What happened? Man, I got another DUI. I mean, my buddy was home from war. We just got home from Iraq, and we were drinking, and he said, have a shot on me. Come on, man. I was in my honor, man, my dead comrades. And I couldn't resist. I took a shot, and I got really drunk, and I got in the car, and I wrecked it, and I hurt a family, and I'm in serious trouble. That doesn't sound good, bro. That sounds like worse than anything you've ever experienced. I know, but I thought the beer plan would work. I said, you ready to quit now? No, man, I'm coming out. I know what the plan is now. Marijuana maintenance. That's the drug, man. It ain't like alcohol. Marijuana is not that dangerous. Actually, it's okay. It's safe. And all this bullshit we feed ourselves. And I say, okay, marijuana maintenance plan. Got it. I'll call you in 2 months. Let me know how it goes. 2 months later, how's it going, bro? Oh, fuck. What you mean? Whoa. What happened? True story from one of my patients. I am back in treatment with you after a few months because I was on the marijuana maintenance plan, and I thought, I'm tired of paying so much for this. I think I should start growing it. How can I grow it? I know how. I have a friend who lives in Colorado. I will ask them to ship me some seeds. And guess what? UPS and FedEx screen for drugs vigorously. So he comes home from work, and he finds federal agents on his doorstep. And now he has interstate traffic of a controlled substance charges. And his whole life has changed. If you don't know nothing about that, you don't want to know nothing about that. That's one of the most severe charges you could be handed. Possibly distributing too. But we're just going with trafficking across state lines. Again, he thought it would work. That sounds worse than ever, bro. You ready to quit? I don't know, man. I got an idea. I need to go to church. Or I need to work more exercise into my program. Or I got a new girlfriend, man. I got this girlfriend. She's great. She's going to help me. She cares about me. She listens to all my problems. The extent that people will take this spiral down to the healing place in our town, which is the homeless shelter, down to the streets where I see you on a bus stop and I ask, are you ready yet? I don't know, man. I got a plan. Oh, God, an alcoholic or addict with a plan? Not freaking good. Why is all this happening? Because you have passed your heart attack moment and you just have not accepted it. That's it. Neither do normal people who have heart attacks accept them either. This is why so many people are relapsing. Neither do diabetics. I got a friend of mine who's lost a leg and he's in a hospital bed for 4 years because of diabetes. It is very hard for human beings to change their behavior. However, a wise apple, when they realize they're playing a game that they cannot win, it makes it a good idea that maybe you should back off. Maybe you should concede. All right, you got this. I've had enough. You win. That's the moment you really need to pay attention to in the progression journey, is the heart attack moment. Now, we're going to end on a positive because I know some of this sounds dire. Especially if you're in this process and you're wondering, oh my God, I think I'm reaching my heart attack point. I don't want to go there. You don't have to. Here's the key to turn this into a positive. Are you willing, as I ask my patients, to close the book on this story that you've been writing so far? Because look, man, it's a pretty good story. You have some adventures. You have some exciting tales to tell around the table. When you go to heaven, you can have some thrilling things, some near-death experiences you can talk about. And you survived. It's all good at this point with just a little bit of bad stuff. If you're willing to close that book, we can do this miracle thing and open up a completely new book on your life and start writing this new adventure. If you don't close that book, you are about to write the chapters that suck. You're about to write the chapters that if you've been to a movie that goes on too long and you're like, damn it, if they had just ended the movie here, it would have been a good film, but they keep dragging it on. Now, I'm going to say something might be controversial, but personally, I felt that way about Oppenheimer. All the Senate litigation and all that, I get it, it's part of the story, but for me, it was like, nah, you're slowing down the pace here. That's losing some of its momentum. Maybe other people like that. But when a movie goes on too long and you're writing the sucky chapters, you're going to regret that the rest of your life. You're going to regret wasting that time. I can't even tell you how many 50 and 60-year-olds I get in group that say, oh, I wish I got it earlier. I wish I could be you and be 20 or 30 when I came in. You can. If you wake up and say, I'm playing a game I can't win anymore. I'm on the other side of the heart attack moment. So I'm going to close this adventure, and now I'm going to write my new adventure. Now, when you write your new adventure, I got good news for you. This story is going to be way better than your drunkalog. When I tell my story anymore, I do enough on my drunkalog to qualify myself so they know I got their disease, but I'm not going to sit here and walk you through my boring tale, my monotonous tale of, yep, now I used again, and then I used again, and then I used again. Newcomers who don't know how to tell their story, they'll do that, and then all of a sudden the whole hour's gone. It's like, I didn't hear anything about recovery. All I heard is I used again. Duh, no shit. That's why you're here. But this new adventure, you have no idea what you're about to write. I had no idea that I was going to go off to Hollywood and work on a film with Brad Pitt and Juliette Lewis. I had no idea that I was going to spend 10 days with the Dalai Lama and look over and see Richard Gere sitting over there by me. I had no idea that I was going to go rock climbing the Grand Canyon and almost lose my life, doing things that are actually not legal to do. You shouldn't have been doing it. We would have gotten in trouble. I had climbing Mount Kilauea in Hawaii all the way up to the volcano and seeing the southern hemisphere that nobody gets to see in the northern hemisphere as far as the stars. We had a guide take us out with a mega powerful telescope because the observatories are up there. And we had to wear parkas because it was so cold. We had to have oxygen tanks because the air is so thin. Again, you couldn't have told me over here trying to hold on to this crappy story saying, but I don't want to stop this story. You could not have told me life would have been this good for this new adventure tale I'm writing. And I encourage you, let go. Once you've reached that point where you've played this out, oh my God. Dan will back me up on this when we talk about this in just a second, but to watch a fella put himself through this misery and come in with a limb that's been lost the next time, or come in with an eye that's out because he was shot, or whatever it is, and you're like, dude, why are you putting yourself through this? Again, I get it because I'm a professional. It's addiction. But at the same point, anybody out there listening to me, if you're in this cycle, you can decide to close the book. Now I'm going to start my recovery journey. Where does it start for everybody? I went to treatment. I got a therapist. I went to my meetings. I got a sponsor. That's where you start. Just start that part of your story, and then you're going to be amazed at how much happens after that. That's when the universe begins to open up to you, actually, and to show you opportunities you couldn't have had when you were closed-minded on the other side of the fence. All right? So, you're going to write the story about the sober me and the happy me versus the wrecked and depressed me. So, of course, it's going to be a better story, guys, right? One last thing about this I want to say. This is a gift that we are given. Excuse me, got that little frog in my throat again. This is a gift that very few people are given in life. The chance to live 2, maybe 3, or even 4 different lifetimes in one life. I know people in my family and my friends who have done some of the same things almost the entire time they've been alive. They've lived in the same place. They've had the same haircut. They don't really change their facial hair or grow any. They don't really do anything different. And they have the same friends. And that's fine if that's what they want. I'm an alcoholic or an addict. I want adventure. I want something new. I always want something new. I'm excited. I want to get my teeth in. I'm bored most of the time because of my inhibitor cells. So this is the opportunity to say, yes, I've had this life, and now I can use this to win the confidence of another addict alcoholic that I know exactly the shit that they've done. I don't care how nasty, dirty, disgusting, vile it is. I know that very well. I can live in dirt, bro. Don't misjudge me. I take you down the mat with my experience. Then I got this other side that can show you the way out. I can now empower you to get free and to have the best life you've ever had on the planet. How many people get that? And my tragedy as a counselor is watching so many people stay in the one life and never get the gift of the second one. I heard a podcast this morning that I played for my aftercare people about people saying, you got to go on that journey of self-discovery. You know, for me, it was writing in my journal every night. It was going to my meetings, learning new shit about my history and my family and being able to equate that to why I am the way I am, how my life turned out this way, getting new friends who could give me new input and feedback, and just we're constant new adventures. Let's go to this place or let's try this out. Oh, this won't be fun because I'm not high. How do you know? Let's just do it. Going to see Prince in Minneapolis, sober, fantastic. My buddy had a stereo system in his Honda Accord hatchback, 1985, that when he played it, the entire parking lot of a Coliseum stadium could hear it. And we drew a crowd of like a couple hundred people dancing and going crazy and sober, having fun. And I have memories of it. That's the best part. You'll have memories of what you do and not forget. So wherever you are on that progression wheel, just know it's a fool's game. You can't win it. If you're addicted, it's going to play out the way it always plays out for everybody. We try to think that we're terminally unique, but the end stop is the gravestone. So I would encourage you, take an honest assessment about these little things we talked about and these little markers along your path that made you sicker and made your life worse, your consequences worse. And then take a judgment and say, man, I think I've had my heart attack moment. I don't want it to get any worse. And you alone are in charge of that decision. I think I'll go on the new pathway. It's that simple. So my friend Dan, we like to kick around in a discussion period about getting his take on this because I can only bring from my experience. And I know Dan has had his own progression experience with his own drugs from going from alcohol and weed to opioids, but I'll let him tell all that. What strikes you about your story as significant moments of progression that you kind of disregarded or didn't want to look at?
Well, it was obviously pretty significant when I was playing cat burglar at night, breaking in houses, stealing people's medication, and getting up in the morning, putting on my khakis and my leather shoes, my button-down shirt, and going playing engineer in the daytime. And family, a couple kids and a
Double
wife
life.
and all this, just a completely double life thing. And you know, the funny thing about when you start that new chapter, I almost don't recognize. I have to actually put some effort towards recognizing the old chapters because it just doesn't seem like that could have really been. I still today can't fathom that I was doing that. that I can. I don't recognize it. It blows me away that I was actually doing what I was doing.
It's incomprehensible because I did things in New York City that I just go, who was that guy?
Yep.
You know, I was lost. That's what I look at. I really have a compassion. That poor little kid at 18, 19 didn't know what the fuck he was doing, to be honest with you.
You know, I said, I've said before that, like, when I found the opiates, when I started taking that like hyper accelerated my alcoholism. It allowed me to, you know, because I was still continuing to drink, but I could drink on those, and that was the downward spiral. I mean, it just spiraled completely out of control because that's all I wanted was that medication.
You know how that's tricky though, because it came in as like a good thing.
Yeah.
So
it's
that's
great.
That's major progression, but to you it was like, hey, I can drink more. I can do this. This works.
You know, I tell that story. My mom was always having surgeries and stuff, and I come home one day, and the alcohol, frankly, had stopped working for me. It wasn't doing for me what it once did for me. And although I still wouldn't, you know, I still tried. And I come home one day and I was wandering around in the house, you know, however many beers I got in me between work and coming here to pick up the kids. And I walked back through by Mom's bedroom and saw those pill bottles sitting over there. And it just like you were talking about when holding the baggie up. Mm-hmm. And I was just,
dinner bell.
I was just pulled into there, man. And like it was totally like, I was on autopilot of some sort. And
Bugs Bunny floating in there.
And I picked them two bottles up and I looked at both of them. I remember I have one in each hand. I mean, I can remember some of this stuff I can remember like it was yesterday. And what I saw on those bottles was for pain. And that's what I identified. I was experiencing pain.
Uh-huh.
And when I popped a couple of those, the world turned right again. And it's like, okay, now I need to figure out how to get a lifetime supply of these.
Yeah. Because I think what you're telling me, what I know about you, is that your favorite?
Yeah, you did that little exercise, and I had never heard that before. That's one of the other things about getting to sit on this side of the table during these podcast episodes. Some people get the benefit of that because they get some of this through your in the treatment program where you work, and I didn't get the benefit of that, and I had trouble thinking about like what would I grab, and I still do, because I don't know that, you were talking about the receptors and stuff, and I don't know, I can't relate to one or the other, because I was a total what was available, man. Mm-hmm. If it was acid that was available, I took it. If it was Xanax that was available, I took it. If it was cocaine that was available, I took it. Now, when I look back through my life, I had these segments of doing a lot of acid. And then I had this segment doing a lot of, well, actually before that,
based
doing
on
a lot
who
of
you're
cocaine.
Hanging, based on who you're hanging with, a lot.
Probably, maybe. I can. My brain doesn't really categorize it like that. Probably, but I do remember, and I'm sure it was availability and like who I was around and what they had. I had a period where methamphetamine, we didn't call it that, we called it crank. Mm-hmm. And I had these periods of doing stuff, and I remember, I put down the pot a long time ago because I didn't like it. It would put me, it was okay for a nightcap. I could take a couple puffs right before bed, but if I took a couple puffs at 8 p.m., I wasn't ready to go to bed yet.
But I think we can drill down and get your answer on that, because that's the first thing I thought about is when you talked to me about pot taking you out of the game. Dan wants to be in the game.
I want to be in the game.
So let's go with that.
Yep. And the opioids had that effect on me. I say this little story too. My dad has a surgery, and he takes a 5 milligram hydrocodone, and he's on the couch asleep for 8 hours.
Yeah.
You give me some, and I'm vacuuming the house and raking the leaves and and doing things.
Do you know that this is still not understood by science, but it is a responsible cause for most of the opioid crisis with the pills? Is these synthetic opioids, which is what they are. There's nothing natural in them. They're made of petroleum products. They're things that can give you cancer. It's horrible to put in your body. Of course, short-term, small amounts, not the same thing. But when you're putting them up your nose every day, it's different. And there was this element, for those that don't know, where people were getting activated, not like the old school morphine and heroin addicts when I was growing up. A heroin addict in my day was a guy in the fucking alley with his needle in his arm and just nodded out, because that's what yeah. But these guys want to get up and go to work and clean their whole house, like spring clean, like crazy clean. And that's reinforcing more addiction, because it's telling your brain, this is good. Yeah. I'm getting more done. I'm better performing. So I need to keep using it.
It was a performance-enhancing drug for me. I could get up and take them in the morning and get going, and I felt like I was more productive at work, Of course, that's all a lie.
And everything was brighter.
That runs out.
I like the way you said that. Everything was brighter, right?
Yep.
When you used the first time. That's the way I felt on cocaine.
Yeah.
It would really, like, the world make it electric. If anybody's seen that movie Crank with Jason Statham, he's got that weird color when he's high. Yeah. When he activates himself. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I guess that's what really, and then that was my downfall, right? When I found that drug of choice, that my favorite, when I found the one that my body was wired for, I lost all control, and I had to do anything to get them. And the funny thing was, I laugh at myself because I would not go on the street and buy them. I had plenty of money. Money was not the issue. I was making well over I was making $125,000 a year. Mm-hmm. I could have went out and bought pretty much what I would need, but I mentally wouldn't lower myself to go out and buy street drugs. Mm-hmm. I was better than that, but I would go sneak in your house in the middle of the night and steal yours. And it didn't start out like that. It started out by going and cleaning out the aunts and other people that in the plain daylight of visiting people's houses. Everybody had some. Every place I went had some. And they
This is
they
before it was
didn't when I
known.
left.
This was before it was known to lock them up and that
Yeah,
kids
it
might
was.
get into them. We didn't know any of that.
And right in that window was about when it started doing the lockdown stuff, and they started the, like, what's it, Casper or something, where they started talking to doctors and seeing, they were tracking this stuff. And about that same time was when that all was in that time frame. But I was getting pills, and I was actually like, I felt better about myself when I'd see that they were 5 or 6 years old. Because these people, these are just leftover. They're not.
Sure.
They're not using
Justifies
these.
it.
They're not using this medication right now.
See, but I'm smiling from ear to ear because I think you're more than like me every time I talk to you about some of this stuff. Dan's kind of a laid back, conservative fellow. Generally, I'm just talking stereotypes. And you look on the surface, it's like, how do we get along with someone? But we do. We have a lot of the same things in common versus other things. But what I'm trying to get at is there's this thing called lifestyle addiction. And the lifestyle addiction is getting a charge out of fooling the system, pulling something off. I might get caught. There's that adrenaline. There's all that jazz. Now, a lot of guys have that with, breaking the law, robbing banks, or just stealing, whatever. Some guys get that with the women and playing around, having a lot of different relationships, messing with the whores, things like that. It's all that charge of getting away with it. So that's that activation. That's Dan wanting to be in the game. He's getting more of a charge off that.
Getting high on the hunt.
Yeah.
Out at night.
So what I was leading to,
catting around.
When we have to pick those three people, whether you relate to Fred or the jaywalker or fucking Fred, the jaywalker, and the guy in Washington. Now the guy in Washington had no thought of drinking that day.
Yep.
I forget what his name was. Or Jim. That's what it is. Jim, jaywalker, and Fred. Okay. But I've always related to the jaywalker because of that thrill of like am doing things and getting away with it because I'm smarter than you. I can outfox you, I can outfool you, and that's just the way I operate. And I always liked that even as a kid because, that's how you get your self-worth in my codependent family is you got to be smarter than everybody else. So maybe you are more like the jaywalker.
Yeah,
you get that.
And then I kind of reject that too in a way that's funny. And that might be exactly what's going on is that I see me in it so much that I don't like the jaywalker story.
I do because it's an absurd example.
It is absurd,
right? But it's this idea that no matter what anybody else is telling me, I know what's best, and you ain't gonna stop me, and I'm gonna get away with it. Look, I got away with it. I only got a broken leg. That's good.
Yeah, yep. And I did the same thing. I had plenty of chances when people would and just like you were talking about how the consequences ramp up and things happen. I had plenty of chances. I got caught a number of times where people didn't do anything. They scolded me and let me off the hook. Mm-hmm. Time after time
because it's such an outside the box thing. There's no school to teach you how to handle that or what you're supposed to say to somebody who does that.
That's in your medicine cabinet, stealing your pills. What are you supposed to do about it? They knew me. I was a good dude by all accounts.
It's like being in a group of people and whipping out your penis or something.
Yeah.
It's like, dude,
what are we gonna do with that?
What are we supposed to say?
Yeah, and I know I did. It put people in very awkward positions to need to, I could see it. I could see I remember seeing the surprise in them, and then like, what fuck, they thought they knew me, and then because again, I was pretty good. I was really a pretty good guy to most everybody.
Double life, man. Being the actor, I was professional at not letting you see that other side of me.
Yep, me too. But,
so, what about this idea of that? Because you came in 2014 originally. What was your first time?
My first sobriety date was in 2011.
2011, okay. And if you'd been presented with that option and the flame had been hot enough under your ass and you were there for yourself, and you were presented with the option that, Dan, close this book. This is a good book. And you wouldn't have had to write those years where it was sucky and you almost went to prison for 20 years, right?
Yep, those 4 years were rough.
How would your life be different if you had quit in 2011?
Yeah. It'd be interesting if I'd have been presented with this then, because I know I did some, and it's no offense to the man who took me through it, because he was doing what he was taught to do, and he was he was doing his very best. But I got some version of diet 12 steps. I got a version of it that didn't have staying power.
Didn't hook you.
Yep, didn't hook me. I didn't get juice. Like you said, even that's the thing we were talking about. Kind of, that can roll into that same thing. The juice I would get out there running around playing cat burglar. I can get that through healthy things today. And I never was really taught that. It was more of just like it was more of a just get sober deal, not replace it with an adventurous life, as you were talking about earlier. And the overcoming the myths of thinking that I would never be able to go to another concert. I'd never be having any friends, and it just wasn't presented to me in the way that you presented it to me, and it wasn't attractive. And I did, like tons of other people, I have that in my story, where I got a year of sobriety, and I just slowly put down every tool I did have. One by one, I put them down and put them down and put them down until a drink looked good again, and it started me right back up again.
It's another stunning, baffling feature that has not been explained by science of our illness, is that it progresses even though you're sober.
Yeah.
And I shudder to think at 40 years recovery, if I were to go back, because I was out of control. But it does. It's really, and so when people say, well, or even, again, not to pick on him, but Gabriel Maté disregarding, and he says straight out, I don't believe it's a genetically thing. Well, it's not genetically entirely. You're disregarding a whole aspect of this that I don't think he understands, that, this thing has gotten worse, this uncomfortable in my own skin, anxiety, depression, resentment, self-pity, and not that other people don't feel these things, right? Because that's the argument. Well, everybody feels that way. Yes, of course they do. But the intensity of it, I don't see other people putting a gallon of whiskey in their gullet every night when they have an ulcer or when they have cirrhosis. And that's the difference, is that we're feeling these things on such a level, it's intolerable. I have to risk my life to cross that street to break in your house and get those pills despite being beaten last time, because it's going to be different this time because I have to get them. If I don't get that, I can't breathe. Yep. That normal people don't understand that about us.
Yeah.
Well, just stop, So, great.
It is a phenomenon. It's what Bill said back then about this. How this thing
something that
does
cannot be
this.
explained.
Yeah.
That's what a phenomenon is. And for you to wrap it up, what about this aspect of what always getting worse, never better, and how you've watched your sponsees go through this? Have you ever seen anybody that just breaks your heart when every time you talk to them?
I mean, I have a guy that still contacts me. You introduced me to him because he lived in Indiana and needed a sponsor. And I was 6 months sober, just like the book said. We rocked out the steps, and I got free, and still wearing an ankle bracelet. And I was introduced to this guy, and I'm watching him just continue to get sicker and sicker and sicker over, now 9.5 years, man, or 9 years, let's say, because I think it was about 6 months into my sobriety when I met him. And then I see some other people, the people that don't do the treatment. I don't know if he listens to this anymore, but I don't know if I should names, but a guy who introduced me to the spiritual underground, I watched him get a year, and by all accounts, when I do talk to him, he's still got his sobriety date, but he looks fucking miserable. And it's that, as we talked about before, he's got these resentments he's chewing on, and he's no fun to be around. Mm-hmm. I've got a cousin that's got that has it, and he's got colitis or Crohn's or some of that kind of stuff, and still drinks on a fair occasion, when it's terrible consequences for him afterwards. It's just eating his guts up, but won't go for the. You see it kill people, and we watched it kill people. I mean, I don't know. I have lost count a long time ago how many people I've watched this disease kill. Jesse, Bobby, guys in our circle. What was his name? Daggone it.
That's a problem. So many of them you forget names.
Yeah, you forget. Yeah, it gets to be regular. It takes them all the way out.
But one that really sticks with me is my sister's husband. Second marriage, going through domestic violence, alcoholism, the whole deal. God bless her. She said, I'm out, went to Al-Anon, not tolerating that anymore in her life. That's such amazing growth. But he was, It's just insane. It just makes no sense. We have an area of town here called Prospect. It's very wealthy and very affluent.
Yep. I
And
like working there.
yeah, there you go. And he was a corporate lawyer for Price Waterhouse, which is one of the most highfalutin, highbrow agencies. You got to have your skill set entirely in place to be able to cut mustard there. And he was doing well, and he was being raised up through the ranks, and they got married, and they had the money to design and build their own house. You know how much money that takes? You have to decide where every socket goes. I don't ever want to get involved in it. And my sister said, I'm never doing that again in my whole life. It's so much work. But they got their house, and then his disease took a hold, and he got worse. And they got divorced. And literally, he went to live with his mother, lost the job, lost his Audi, lost the house, lost all of his assets, drinking, our legal drug in our country. And eventually, at the end, she said his sister was keeping my sister updated, and she said he looked like a concentration camp survivor. He had lost so much weight, and his hair had all fallen out from the alcohol. And he's living in his mother's basement, and she's seeing this every day.
Yeah.
Her son is dying right before her eyes, and she doesn't see it. In fact, she would blame my sister for his woes. True codependent. I'm going to stick by my man. It's not his fault. And literally, he knows the whole time his brother-in-law's in treatment, is a counselor, could get him in a heartbeat, could save his life, and he died unnecessarily in that basement, drinking himself to death, with his mother signing off on it. And I don't know, I'm not trying to beat her up, but I am trying to say there is a karmic price to pay that she'll have to deal with when it finally dawns on her. It's like, how could you let that happen? Stunning, the power of this disease. The only one disease we actually know about that can reach out and change other people to make them as sick as we are. All right, so if you are dealing with progression with any illness out there, get off the Ferris wheel, man. You don't have to go all the way to the bitter end. Please do yourself that favor. Even small changes will help prevent a crisis of a total bottom. So now we'd like to shift into the part of the program where we like to go over some questions from you, the listener, about certain areas of your life that you're struggling with, any problems you're having in relationships or with your recovery, or literally any topic at all. The one promise we make you is that when we read your questions, we will not identify you by name, so that you can remain completely anonymous and safe, and you can ask us anything, and we'll be happy to try to address it. Send your questions to IM12, the word recovery, @gmail.com. That's the 4 digits, IM12, recovery@gmail.com. So we have one letter this week, but it's a great topic, so I think we can really kick it around a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up here. So this comes from us. It's a very short question, but it's loaded, so I'm going to read it slowly. How often do you listen to your higher power? Does your higher power often speak to you through guilt or some other emotions? So how often do you listen to your higher power, and does your higher power speak to you through guilt or some other emotions? Great question. Thank you so much for sending it in. So the great thing about recovery that we over-talked about probably on the spirituality podcast, but it's one of my favorite topics, is the fact that you get to choose your own conceptions. And the greater thing about recovery is that that conception can change and evolve with time. You're not stuck, as some people might be in their certain faith, that we have to do it this way, and we have to believe this, and we have to practice that. It's like, no, that is not recovery. Recovery is like the wide open gamut. What else is new? What other information can I take in? What other experiences can help influence me in my ideas about what this thing is, about a higher power? So that's the first thing I wanted to touch on, because my idea of a higher power today is way different, and it continues to evolve even at 40 years recovery. I'm in a space right now where I'm working really hard for my own personal development to stop naming, describing, or trying to define what this power is. Now, Bill in the Big Book says it was impossible for any of us to define or even comprehend this power that is God, right? So it wouldn't be God if we could understand it, because we're small little minds, right? But I find so many people get hung up on definitions. Do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? Blah, blah, blah. So to me, it's a force, it's a power that's available like electricity, and when I am aligning myself, my energies, my focus, my emotions, my actions with the right thing, I'm doing the next right thing in my path. I'm walking calmly and mindfully through my day. Every door opens up to me like a green light. And I'm literally, people are nicer. You'll get opportunities you couldn't get before. I've told stories in my group where I've gotten upgrades to first class tickets on airlines just from being in the moment and being nice to the person behind the counter and talking to them like a person. Or suddenly the person at the department store is offering you their employee discount for no reason, but they just like you. And they're trying to give you stuff. And you're like, you know that's not them. That's this power working through, and you just acknowledge it. And you say, thank you, Father, is what I like to say, or thank you, whatever universe or whatever that works for you. So the good news for this person I wanted you to know is that this will be a journey you'll go on, and you have to, the first part of which is getting rid of some of your old ideas. Our old ideas that God could be anything but good. That's the second part of the question that I picked up too when you said, does it speak to you through guilt? Yes, absolutely, it used to. When I was first in recovery, that's all I could relate to, because that's what my church upbringing taught me, is that my higher power was vengeful, judgmental, you're going to hell, you're a sinner born in sin, you need to be saved, all that good, fun stuff. And so I couldn't comprehend anything but a evil, mean God who's picking on me. I had a good friend of mine, Jamie in Minnesota, shout out. He would say he used to feel like higher power was walking around with this behind him all day long, just waiting to flick him, just flick him. It's a great picture. But I've completely rejected that. Today, my concept and my communication with this power is it's there to help. It's there to aid us, to support us. And I hear my patients talk down on it so much. And they're really talking about other people that did these things to them. They're talking about human frailties, human weaknesses. If you want to call it sin, sin means missing the mark. It's an old archery term from Greek language. That's where the word sin comes from. It means missing the mark. So it's a mistake. But they're saying, well, this person made a mistake, but I'm going to blame God for it, right? I don't believe that's... I've seen no evidence for that since I've been sober. How do I know that's true? Well, when I came in recovery, I expected to be blasted for all the bad things I had done. I needed to go through a period of penitence, which means I'm supposed to suffer and really experience my pain of all the horrible things I did before I deserved this gift of forgiveness, right? Guess what I got when I walked in the door of recovery? Come here, brother. We love you. We're here for you. You're awesome. We support you. Just be who you are. Nothing but pure, unconditional love. And I find the more I align myself with that idea in my behaviors, I can't be contrary to that in my behaviors. I can't walk around like a jerk and offend other people and hurt other people and expect that loving power to assist me or be on my side that day. And we all know that feeling, general karma. When you're putting crap out there and you're getting roadblocks everywhere you go and friction with other people and hostility in traffic, you're like, oh, maybe it's me. Yes, it's you. So I try to put out that energy of when you say communicate with it or how does it speak to you. I'm going to tell you something I've learned. I've heard it before, but it's true. God is a comedian. God has an amazing sense of humor. And Voltaire, one of my favorite quotes he used to say is that God is a comedian who's playing to an audience that's afraid to laugh. And every day of my life when I make a mistake, some bonehead things happen, or I drop something, or something falls, or I'm just getting I'm in a rush to get to work and I'm getting the slowest guy in front of me. And I don't curse that guy as much anymore as I look up and I go, really? Dude, you're slowing me down here? You want me to learn patience? What's up? It's not a bad thing. See, my old mind would have interpreted that as, you asshole, why are you doing that? I'm late. Instead, I'm able to step out of my skin and sort of laugh at it and not judge it and just go, okay, all right. And the more I laugh about this stuff, I have an easier time of it that day. I feel closer to that power. It feels more real to me. Oh, man, God gets such a bad rap. For all the things, I wake up in the morning, I have fresh air to breathe. I have a supply of water. Not everybody has in the world, I get that, but I do. I have food in the refrigerator. My electricity comes on. My heater works. My hot water's on. I get in my car and it starts and I go. And again, these are all material objects, but there is no separation. If we say God is everything, then that means God is in every molecule of everything that exists. So I have no problem believing that the things that are working right in my life are directly because of my good relationship with this power. So I try to approach it that I'm a dummy. I make mistakes. I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to screw up. But I'm trying. I am trying every day. Richard Pryor used to say, I'm trying, really trying. I'm trying every day to walk the good path of doing the next right thing and pause when agitated, not blow my crap on somebody else, call my supports when I need to vent. And guess what? Skids are greased, as Dan would say. I have this great communication. And for me, the communication is a dialogue I have every day. One of my favorite movies is the movie Harold and Maude. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. And Harold asks Maude at one point, Maude, do you pray? And she goes, pray? No, I communicate. And he goes, with what? She goes, with life. So what she's saying is every action she presents towards nature, towards animals, towards her fellow humans, that's an act of being in touch with that power, being in touch with that God. When I'm working with a newcomer and I can see he's clueless and he doesn't know where he is or what's the truth is, I try to be kind. I try to be gentle. I try to be patient with him. I had one of my patients call me an asshole again today. Not directly. They do it very sneaky. Man, I got in your group. When I first got in your group, Chris, I thought you were an asshole. I was like, yeah, it's that old saying. We are the people who spit in the faces of the angels that God puts in our life to save our life. Weird. But I said, so I'm an asshole because I care and I'm trying to help you. But you back off of that and you just look at that and say, they're just confused. They don't know. And you don't take it personally. And so I'm in constant contact with my higher power all the day, mostly saying thank you, to be honest with you. Most of my communications with God is thanks. That worked out. Thanks for getting me here in time. Thanks for this working out. Thanks for not having a patient show up that was going to be a problem today. Thanks for that paperwork getting done that somebody was able to help me out with that at work. It's astonishingly how much goes your way when you lay back and let your higher power play that role in your life. Just constant contact. That's the phrase we have in the program. So I'll shut up for a second. Obviously, I'm passionate about this, but now I'll let Dan juice on it for a little bit.
Yeah, I like when Bill says a stream of life. You know, we're in a flow of life. That's the way I kind of see this higher power. And, you know, and I kind of can see what the guy's saying. And as you said, you know, when you're new, it does feel like it might be guilt that's doing. But, you know, today, my gut will talk to me at some level, something inside of me. And I know when I'm in alignment and when I'm not. And, you know, sometimes I am, you know, I'm still human and I'm urged to maybe do something that I know I shouldn't. and like that could be what he's saying there about your guilt telling you what to do. But I, like you, reject that it's a guilt thing. I had to rewire that whole thought process of this punishing God and all this, and I follow much the same as you. And I've rewired my self-talk because I believe everybody I believe that I'm not alone in that. I spend a great deal of time talking to myself in my head.
We all do.
I think we all do. And I've rewired that. I've rewired that to where I'm talking to my higher power, and instead of you know, spinning around up in my own head.
He might be thinking, how do you do that? And so honesty is the key. You can just tell your higher power, hey man, I'm having a hard time with this project you're working on. Would you please let this screw go in?
Yep, and I ask for help on a daily basis. I do. That's part of my communication. You know, I'm walking into something I don't know what I'm, you know, I don't know exactly what I'm getting into in any particular project that I'm being called to a house to do. And I ask for help. And sometimes I run into a block and something's not going right. And I use the old pause tool then too. It's more of a doubtful thing than agitated most of the time. And I back off of it and I ask for help and I go back to it, and all of a sudden the things fall into place. And, you know, like you said, the other stuff that I guess my old saying there about the skids are greased, man, I'm having a lot of confusion with my newer sponsees. They don't know what I'm saying. And I don't know if that's just newcomer stuff or if it's an antiquated saying or both.
Probably is antiquated.
Same. I said, but you understand what I'm saying. Things just go smooth for me, man. Most things work out today. You know, I took my truck in the shop and I'm thinking that I got maybe some serious front end problems, and there's going to be, you know, it's a 4-wheel drive. So when you get into messing around with the front end of a 4-wheel drive, you can be talking about some serious money. And I just dropped a new transmission in my other truck the other day. And but they called me up today and said, you just got bad tires. And I mean, it was the best case scenario. He said, we'll get some new tires on it tomorrow. You can pick it up tomorrow afternoon. And so I thought, and when I dropped it off today, that guy told me they wouldn't even have a chance to look at it until Tuesday. That's what he told me. And at 3 o'clock today, they're calling me with the resolution to the problem and the solution. It cost me a set of new, the price of a set of new tires and an alignment. But
you probably got in and out faster than any other customer.
Yeah,
that's the weird thing. Is you get put to the front of the line.
Yep. And I just went in there and and it pays to be a friendly dude. Mm-hmm. Why not? I think God calls me, my higher power calls me to be a friend to all. Love and tolerance is our code, and I walk with that.
An average person without these tools, though, not picking on, just saying,
Tuesday
would go in there with defenses off, right? And they can read that. Like they're going in there like, all right, how's this guy going to rip me off?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play him just as much as he's playing me. And you don't do that with a plumber or electrician or a mechanic, because they will screw you if they say you're trying to play them.
He said, "Well, it's gonna be Tuesday," and I said, "No problem. I got another vehicle, and I'm blessed to have that."
But that communication of recognizing that is God. Yeah. See, that's the hard part, because especially for a newcomer, is they don't understand that. I was taught by Marion, everything that good happens in your life, thank it. Thank the universe for it. That invites more of it. If you get a break, get the green light, say thank you, Father, or whatever. It doesn't hurt. And I do all day long. That's why, like I say, it's one of my biggest things I say all the time is thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for this. Thank you for that.
Some people just see that extra O in the word in between good and God. And that's the only real difference in between the two things. And
I try to prove that to my patients using the analogy that there's a line that Jesus has, and again, so much is misunderstood, and yet he said such astoundingly profound things. He said essentially, the love you have for you as parents, no matter how wicked you are, the love you have for your children is beyond measure, and yet your Father has way far more love for you than that. And again, we go, huh? What? Right. God's going to punish me. But I say to my patients, if you have a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old that's just learning how to walk, because they'll always come in and say, my higher power is testing me. My higher power threw me a test today, man. Threw some marijuana. I found some marijuana in my closet. That's my higher power testing me. No, dude, that's you not knowing you put a freaking bag in your coat. But
that's your dumb ass.
You're forgetful. You're blackout. But you got a 1-year-old trying to walk. If you're a parent that loves them, are you going to stick your leg out and trip them? Yeah. That's the philosophy of testing you. Why, when you're finally doing the right thing, and you're finally following directions, would your higher power not support the shit out of you or make it harder? That makes no logical sense. Mm-hmm. But again, that's how powerful that program is, that it will defy programming. It will defy logic to even explain what you mean by that. So I reject anything that anybody says bad about higher power, because God forbid, if that power isn't all good, wouldn't we have been taken out a long time ago?
Oh, yeah.
Based on our behaviors, why are we still here?
Yep.
Now, Mother Earth, that's a different story. That's nature. That's just the way the system's set up. Mother Earth may kick us off of here for the plight we're doing to the climate. But other than that, higher power is trying to help us, man. And I also believe the higher power is trying to inspire us with that higher thinking. When Einstein has a breakthrough, or hopefully one day somebody has a breakthrough about the climate and says, oh, this is what we need to do, you got to wonder if it's all going to work out. There was a time in the Industrial Revolution where they really thought we had just gone too far with factories, turn of the century, 19th century, and 20th century, and just destroyed too much of the environment. And it's like, oh, we found out we've got other ways of doing these machines. Same thing when they had too many horses in the cities drawing carts, and they had shit everywhere, and it was causing all the disease. Now we had a different angle. I'm not saying automobiles were necessarily great, but they did change the environment. So I don't know. I have hopes that things can work out. I just get frustrated with human emotion, because that's the thing that keeps us, I think, stuck in our evil, warlike ways. Is we just get pissed off. We say, I don't care. Yeah. I'm just going to do what I want to do.
That question right there is really just, it is the question. Mm-hmm. It is the thing that you get. How do I get hooked up with this? And it's every newcomer's question, every single one.
Well, I would also encourage him that I found my higher power by cussing him out.
Yeah.
And that was my
It's a good
first
story, too.
honest discussion with the higher power, was to just say, this is what's up. I need to talk to you. Here it comes. And so I defy anybody to tell me how to talk to this power, because I got nothing but love and support and 40 years recovery after that. So don't come in here telling me that I can't cuss to be spiritual.
Yeah. And
Fuck
I still do
you.
too. Something happens and I go, fuck,
This
God,
is what
are you-"
worked for me, and I'm still sober, so back off.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Why would I nitpick something that worked for somebody to help them stay sober 40 years? That's so stupid.
Yep.
But again, I believe that's part of programming too. You know, people have this idea, well, if you curse, you're stupid, or you have no other language. No, it's a word as any other word in the lexicon of what's available to us to use. I'm a writer. Why would I not use a word that's available? It's because it has baggage for you. But again, I'll just say it one last time. The people that have the biggest hang up with that, if any newcomers run into that and they get on you for being honest at a meeting and speaking your heart, ask them what they're going to go home and watch on HBO tonight.
Right. Yeah.
Watch that soft porn Game of Thrones, sadomasochistic, curse word laden crime drama, psycho crazy stuff. Oh, but you can't say screw it at a meeting. Don't you say that. Insanity.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the podcast for today, guys. Appreciate everybody being here. We're having a blast doing this, and we're going to keep on as long as higher power allows us. We need your questions. We are a little light on questions this week, so please, I'm begging you, do us a favor. Write us a little question about anything in your life. What's going on? What do you need help with? Comment, whatever. Also, please like and subscribe. We need your help to get up the analytics. We're raising our views, and a little bit more people will come up when they're scrolling, and that's how they're going to miss us. We're going to get buried in YouTube content without your help. So please, this ain't about making us rich. We're doing this to help people. So please help us to reach the newcomer for anything you can do to help us raise our sites. We like to end every podcast with the Serenity Prayer, as they do in many meetings. So, Dan, if you'd like to join me, Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, keep coming back. It works if you work it. You die if you don't. Thanks for being here, everybody. We love you, so love yourself. See you next time.